All right. Well, hello and welcome to Bad Art, the world's premier anti-art podcast. Today, you're joining us for our halftime spectacular. That's right.
Woo!
All of the glitter, all of the spectacle,
All of the
only
nipples.
one nipple, and we made sure that never happened again. And full disclosure, it was mine, and I apologized immediately afterwards. Um,
That was a big
sorry.
twist right at the top of the episode. No, I loved it. I just didn't know that it was your nipple. So
Yeah, we've got all of the things. And really, what we're doing today is talking about the Super Bowl halftime show as a political object, which has developed since the first Super Bowl in 1967 through to today, where the scheduled performer Bad Bunny is under attack from right wing influencers who are outraged that a Puerto Rican who sings in Spanish might be featured on America's pastime. So we've got all that and more to share with you today. Lots of really interesting deep dives into Super Bowl halftime history. And we look forward to sharing with that with you. So I'm Colin McLaughlin-Alcock, here as always with,
Marielle Grushko.
and you're listening to Bad Art. Welcome. So before we get started, we did want to acknowledge that it's been a busy few weeks since the last time we,
Busy January. Because the last time we recorded was in
yeah,
December. So we haven't spoken to you all. Yeah.
and yeah, so busy January in terms of political events. Obviously, the biggest thing happening right now is ICE's invasion and occupation of Minneapolis, and the people of Minneapolis very bravely and valiantly fighting back consistently, although tragically. And then there's just a lot else going on, whether it's Trump kidnapping the president of Venezuela, threatening to invade Iran, threatening to invade Greenland, or just everything else, the ramp up of Nazi posting from government Twitter accounts. It's just all there.
The arrest of a journalist this morning.
That's right. Multiple journalists, including Georgia Fort, who is noted for documenting the George Floyd uprising, among other things. But yeah, multiple journalists arrested for covering the protests in Minneapolis this morning. So sad state of affairs in the U.S. And we want to acknowledge that, even though this episode might feel a little frivolous topically, although we don't think so. But we're not doing a current events episode, right?
Well, I think what we wanted to level about, or what we
Yeah.
wanted to level with you all about, is that there's a real push and pull to anyone recording a podcast right now that has anything to do with politics or culture,
Yeah.
particularly when it's like American media workers, which we are. And yeah, we've often, in the like 6-ish months that we've been working on this podcast, we've really felt that tension between having these plans for topic specific deep dives that we, have done the research for and are, prepared and interested and excited to share with our listeners. And then the whiplash of current events all the time, which is, of course, just part of what it means to live in America in 2026 and in
Yeah.
2025. But it's something that we've really struggled with, and we've been thinking about what to do about that.
Yeah. And there are a couple of things to think about there. Like one thing to note, just, I mean, for the listeners, we have a pretty slow process. Like, I think at minimum, it takes a month to get an episode out and probably 6 weeks because we come up with an idea, we talk about what we want to do, we pull resources together, and then we record and then we edit. So we're not a fast, immediate response journalist outlet, which in that case, we want to get greater depth,
Just to point out, we don't have a producer, so it's, just us
right?
pulling this together.
We're sometimes lucky enough to get help from friends, but very minor, and it is a lot of work, and we have other jobs. But also, like we've talked about, we don't also want to be constantly reactive. We don't want to just be chasing the latest thing that Trump has done. I think that's one of his strengths actually is getting people running from one event to the next without putting together or responding to the whole project of emerging Trumpist fascism, which is not to say like I don't think that's what's happening in Minneapolis. Like I think people responding to and pushing back against ICE is a coordinated response that undermines Trump in real serious ways. But I think jumping from one response to another makes it harder to coherently respond to Trumpism, fascism, right-wing Americanism as a problem as a whole. And so one thing we hope we can do is give deeper information into the processes and backgrounds that bring us to today and to the conflicts and political stakes of what's happening now with a deeper historical and thematic look.
And I think it's worth pointing out this incredible resistance that we see in Minneapolis right now is the result of years and years of work, right? Of laying the
Right.
groundwork, of coordinating, of building trust. And our goal for this podcast is to do some of that groundwork on the intellectual side when it comes to art and its politics,
Yeah.
because we see, and we know that you all see as well, some of the incredibly cynical ways in which this administration manipulates architecture, aesthetics, art, music, the ballroom, the Kennedy Center, et cetera, right? So there's a deliberate artistic program going on here. And we think that right now we can be more effective by grounding some of that and presenting some alternatives rather than chasing every artistic outrage that we see happening in this administration.
That said, it might be worth pointing out what some of our past episodes have to do with the moment now. And given what's happening in Minneapolis, I've of course been thinking about our Minneapolis episode where I spoke with colleagues and friends from Memorialize the Movement, a group that's preserving art from the George Floyd uprising, but also talking some about the process of doing organizing in Minneapolis. I think also our recent War on Terror episode or our conversation about the aesthetics of war in the It's Brutal episode, our return to the Weird Little Architects, really highlights the way that Trump is trying to use the visual field as a source of consolidating control and terror. So those are things like if you're trying to understand what's happening right now, those are episodes that I think are useful for getting deeper insight into the present moment. And then maybe a last thing I'll say, I lived in Minneapolis for 3 years, and it's been real weird to watch this happening from far away. And to watch it happening from Philadelphia. So also, I lived only a few blocks from where Alex Pretty was murdered. So the scenery is very familiar to me. These are places where I walked and where I've been. And so one thing, it hits me fairly hard, but I think the other is I live in Philadelphia now. Philadelphia is a very proud city, and there's a lot of memes going around about like, just wait till ICE gets here, we'll fuck them up, which I think Philadelphia will, but I also think like that discounts Minneapolis. And you mentioned the years of organizing. Like Minneapolis has been under siege for years now, whether you want to talk about Philando Castile, George Floyd, ICE, Standing Rock, many years ago, AIM, Black Panthers. There's just long legacies of organizing in the city against real serious injustice. And so the thing I'll say is like Minneapolis is prepared. They shouldn't have to deal with this over and over again. They don't want to deal with this over and over again. But, when it comes, people are organized and ready in ways I don't think other cities are. And probably, again, no one wants this, but Trump surely made a mistake in picking Minneapolis as the site of. I'm sure he chose it as revenge for the George Floyd uprising, but Minneapolis is a city that's prepared to respond in ways I think a lot of U.S. cities aren't.
And just to point out, the fact that they chose Minneapolis for this invasion betrays their total lack of understanding of solidarity. It's a mistake that you could only make if you not just didn't care about solidarity, but couldn't even see it when it's
Yeah.
staring you in the face.
Did you see this? God, I don't know if this makes it into the podcast, but what's his name? Oh, Rufo, Christopher Rufo, the neo-Nazi like organizer who works with Trump.
God.
He's mad about all of the white people responding to like participating in the anti-ICE resistance, and has started posting about like the deficiencies of like the Nordic race. Like he's dividing whiteness up into like subcategories, and like which ones are in Minneapolis are now traitors, like separate races. He's like distinguishing out like the different subgroups. So, whiteness is falling apart. It's wild.
This is that's it's what we've wanted this entire time for whiteness to fall apart. So I can't believe we've worked on this for years and he just tweeted it out yet again.
Whiteness has been destroyed.
No, I mean, I saw a poll the other day that showed under 50% of white people supporting Trump
Yeah.
at this point.
And unemployed young and old white men who were like his biggest supporters, no college, like this demographic that is solidly Trump is today 50-50 split. Like these numbers are crazy. He's totally underwater, which doesn't necessarily mean he'll stop or lose, but that's fascinating.
I learned today about the penguin meme. Are you familiar?
No.
So the penguin meme comes from a Werner Herzog documentary set in Antarctica. And it depicts this penguin who is seized by a fit of madness. And so instead of, I mean, not that the whole documentary is about the mad
Hmm.
penguin. This is just one scene, right? But this penguin, instead of going with his penguin friends to go eat fish, instead starts run waddling toward the mountains of Antarctica to what is certain to be his death. I guess this has become an inspirational meme to folks on the right. DHS posted their version of this meme saying that real Americans have known all along why the penguin would run to the mountain.
I don't understand. Why is the penguin running to the mountain in their view?
Oh, well, so their edit of the penguin meme has the penguin running and then you see the invasion of Minneapolis.
Okay. So participating in the invasion
So their idea,
or fleeing society.
I it's I I think it's still unclear to me beyond like, the
Right.
death drive.
So,
Yeah.
sorry for asking those questions, but the death drive makes sense. Like that, you know, I mean, I saw someone talking about it today, but long story short, like fascism is suicidal, right? It is. Let's destroy this thing that we have. Let's constantly pick it apart. All it can be is violence, right? And an inward moving violence that steadily excavates more and more of itself, or more and more of the body politic.
Which is kind of an interesting transition to talking about the Super Bowl because, there have been a lot of critiques about the martial overtones of football as a sport, the way in which it's a sport that is, in some ways, uniquely, in some ways, not uniquely, premised on the destruction, particularly of Black and brown bodies.
Right.
And the halftime show segment of the Super Bowl is like this interesting counterpoint, we could call it, to the action of the game on either side of the halftime show. And I think counterpoint is a good word because it is, in some sense, opposite of the violence that we see in the game itself, but in other ways, as we'll be trying to show you today, still reinforcing that underlying structure.
Yeah. So one of the things that's happened in the past week is that I have watched several hours of past halftime shows. One thing to add on here is like there's a weird mix of messages that comes through, but certainly the militarism is not gone, right? Like that there are sometimes flyovers, lots of American flags. At the same time, it seems that the NFL really likes to do, messages of peace, let's be together, interracial hand holding or something. There have been, half a dozen tributes to Martin Luther King, like spliced into the halftime show in various ways. Some more ridiculous than others, but the year after King was killed, they had like a narrator read some of his speeches, like into the halftime show. So there's like a long
Oh, wow.
history of, yeah, let's say contradictory messages like coming through the halftime show as the NFL struggles to present itself as some sort of cultural icon, tries to define itself culturally in a place that is inherently contradictory.
And could we say that the NFL is like a synecdoche for white American culture in kind of its tortured relationship to nationalism and race and trying to sort of figure out its position?
That's interesting. I mean, at times clearly it would like to be. I don't know. Let's talk about that more because that yeah, it's a bit more conflicted. It wants to be representative of real America, which I think its owners and planners mistake for white America much of the time. Although,
Hmm.
like, there is significant pressure from Black America, from others to be included, from the players to be included. A funny thing that happened last year is that they allowed, players to show homeland pride. So to put like a flag of the place that they were from on their jersey, which for, some folks works fine, but for others, their country is non grata, and so it raised like ire among the fan base, like why am I have to see this flag of a country I hate, on the NFL field.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So I like your idea about being like a synecdoche of white America, but I think it's more complicated than that because they want often to exclude Black America to be the Ford truck model of America, but I don't think they honestly can do that. And that's something we're going to talk about today, actually. Like a lot of the racial politics of the halftime show is in this push and pull between, social and political accountability versus being nice and safe and white and boring. Like these two things pushing against
Hmm.
each other and often like vibing back and forth. So it was interesting, like your transition to the NFL and the halftime show being the question of the NFL's identity and its relationship to like white America as an idea. It's funny, I had a similar but different transition. I was thinking about, Bad Bunny itself being a transition and we've been talking about Minneapolis. Well, the whole thing ICE is doing in Minneapolis is removing any sign of foreignness, attacking any sign of difference, pushing it out of the country. And of course, the Bad Bunny controversy has been that conservative groups are mad that a Puerto Rican singer who performs in Spanish is going to be visible in this event. And so it's a similar idea of like trying to scrape all evidence of difference out of the country, motivating, the right-wing attacks in both places. So, I mean, that was definitely one of our motivations for doing this episode is that Turning Point USA. So Charlie Kirk's former racist recruitment organization that staged racist rallies on college campuses and debates about whether or not immigrants are human beings. Now led by his ex-wife or widow, Erica Kirk.
Widow. Although I would forgive you for saying ex-wife because she's handled the whole situation so cynically, but widow technically.
All of the performance of someone who is joyously divorced, but saying that they're going to host a counter program, right? That they want to share a more American halftime show, which in theory will play at the same time. This is a statement that they made in, I think, October. There's no evidence that they're actually going to follow through, so we'll see. But there's been conversation about like having Kid Rock or Creed or even Laura Trump sing as a counterweight to Bad Bunny. So, I mean, I would be surprised if they actually follow through because I think they must know that they'll be embarrassed by the turnout numbers. And like unless they can get like a real star, which they can't,
Yeah.
who's gonna switch channels to watch that?
I mean, look, now that Trump is not attending the Super Bowl, maybe he can get some of his diehards to watch him watch the counter programming.
Maybe, yeah. And he's not attending because it's too far away, right?
Too far away. Also, he is, he doesn't like Bad
Yeah,
Bunny or Green Day, but it's not about that. It's just that it's too far away.
it's not about that.
I don't know a lot about football plays, but that would be the Hail Mary kind of option, right? It would be like maybe if we show Trump watching this counter spectacle, other people will tune in to watch Trump watch the counter spectacle.
That's such a funny idea. Like, I mean, actually, that is what reaction videos are, right? It's watching somebody watch something else, but it's like such a strange idea to have like this multiple degree of remove to watch this terrible right wing
You know,
response.
earlier this week, my students they read Anthropology in the Savage Slot, which is a response to postmodern theory. And my students were like, "What is postmodernism? Like, what is the postmodernist critique?" And I gave them this little overview. And of course, my students were like, "Well, that just makes sense. Like, that's just a logical view of the world. That is what has happened, right?" So this idea of watching at various degrees of remove, like, yeah, it sounds bizarre to you and me, but that's just because we're old AF.
Everything is further mediated at all times.
Yeah. Everything is a spectacle. Absolutely.
We should say a little bit about our other piece of motivation for this episode, which is not this at all. But so we recently recorded a War on Terror episode. We did more work in that direction, which we've not finished or released. We're having some technical difficulties. But as part of that research, we wound up watching U2's halftime show from 2002. So the halftime show that happened immediately after 9/11 and was presented as a response to 9/11. It's totally bizarre. They basically reenact the collapse of the towers. So they have, names of victims rise up behind them into a shape of the Twin Towers. The towers collapse. There's a cloud of smoke. And then Bono rips open his shirt to reveal the triumphant American flag underneath, all while singing a song about Martin Luther King, because of course he's just throughout throughout any NFL spectacle, Martin's brought in as like the legitimating of whatever racial performance they have going on. But we found that totally bizarre, and that led us to explore some more of the Super Bowl history, which is also bizarre. If you look at, top performance lists, that one comes up a lot, which I think for both of us having seen it is quite strange because it's not good. And it's
Hmm.
perhaps a thing of its moment, but like looking at it today, it is offensive,
Yeah.
bizarre, not well performed. Like it's such a weird thing to be held onto as an example of the form.
I think something that we have found fruitful as anthropologists looking back at these older halftime shows is that they allow us to practice our defamiliarization, right? They're long
Yeah.
enough ago that we can look with new outsiders' eyes at some of these moments in American culture, and what was once taken as normal strikes us as very bizarre. Yeah, which is really fun for us. So, Colin, you mentioned earlier that you fried your brain by watching several hours.
I watched so much of this garbage. Yes, go ahead.
So, besides the damage that you have done to yourself by engaging in this activity, what did you learn from it?
Well, I think the thing that I maybe knew, but that really surprised me is how recent the halftime show as we think of it is. Like the kind of spectacle that you see today is relatively new. Before the 1990s, this was not what the NFL was doing. They had, college marching bands or Disney performers or a youth group called Up With People that, would do cover songs and
I've
dance.
I've heard of Up With People. Yes.
It's
Hmm.
weird, but it's so amateur hour. So if you watch these older halftime shows and compare them to the ones you see today, they're not well made, right? They're just like it looks like a B-rate talent show performance of some cover songs with some dancers who are not in time, often some really disastrous special effects. They're themed. People have fallen over. They did a reenactment of the War of 1812 at some point.
People have fallen over.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's very messy.
Wait, but I do want to hear about the reenactment of the Battle of 1812.
Well, they scared Andrew Jackson's horse and it fled. So the cannons
Oh
going
no.
off made too much noise. Like these are, B-rate entertainment at best for the first 30 years.
Did they ever have like an Elvis impersonator?
Yeah, but he did card tricks and didn't sing Elvis songs.
Oh, interesting. Not what I would have expected. Okay.
No, it's like there was no there's no accountability.
You know, I feel that this is just a really poor choice from an audience retention perspective. Like you announce an Elvis impersonator and then he does card tricks. I'm changing the
He
channel.
did sing something, but it wasn't an Elvis song. It's just um
A bait and switch.
so maybe let me share something with you, I think is a way to go. So let's take a look at the 1992 halftime show. So this is one of the later ones of these sort of amateur hour shows. I think this one's produced by Disney. It's a tribute to the Winter Olympics, which are coming up. So they're trying to advertise the Winter Olympics with a dance performance that celebrates winter.
So presumably, is this happening because the Winter Olympics will air on the same channel that's airing the Super Bowl?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
makes
that's the
sense.
kind of thing we're talking about here. So this is 1992.
Line Productions proudly presents the 1992 Super Bowl 26 Halftime Spectacular, Winter Magic.
Hi, everybody! Come on and feel the cold. Come to Minnesota where winter's the hottest time of the year. It's winter magic.
Like they spell winter magic in marching band, but they can't even get the letters the right shape. There are people dressed up as snowflakes, like prancing around, but not in rhythm.
So, I loved that. It has, to my mind, it has the same energy as like Oscars shows before they decided they needed to tighten them up because people would stop watching if there were elaborate dance numbers in them. But just like this like really zany, like, hey, let's put on a show kind of energy, which is very endearing to me.
Let me also share a little bit of Up With People because, like, it's just it is worth seeing. Like they did a bunch of these and they're so sloppy.
Ladies and gentlemen, for our halftime spectacular, the National Football League is proud to welcome back Up With People, an exciting educational and cultural program known around the world. We saw them at Super Bowl X in Miami, and this afternoon, 3 of their international casts with students from 23 countries will give a special salute to the music and the energy of the fabulous swing era. Now, here they are, Up With People.
It's just a bunch of like college-age students like badly swing dancing and matching outfits in the middle of the not singing in time or on key.
This made me remember what the other one also reminded me of. So both the Up With People and the Winter Extravaganza really have Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade energy,
They do.
right?
Slightly lower production value, but yes.
Like that, and with the Thanksgiving Day Parade, I get it because they're doing it like in freezing cold temperatures. It's a parade, so it's like moving, right? And the camera just happens to catch them performing at one stop along the route. And so you have these cases of like bad timing, people singing off key. It's more forgivable in that kind of parade context. But there's also clearly some acts in the parade that are basically pay to play, right? Where it's like these people who don't really like you have the Rockettes, and then you have like some pay to play like women's dance school where they like half of them can't keep up with the choreo. So the Up With People had that kind of energy. It's a cute vibe. I don't hate it, but it's very different from what we see today.
Right. Yeah, no, it's totally different. And so what happens in 1992, you have this winter festival, celebration of the Winter Olympics. They have famous figure skaters like doing little figure skating routines on pieces of plastic that
Oh,
have been brought out.
oh man. Okay, that sounds very sad for the figure skaters, but I love figure skating, so I'm gonna go back and watch that.
It's very sad.
I also like didn't really understand why do they introduce themselves by being like Minnesota? Like were they playing the Super Bowl in Minnesota?
It was in Minnesota that year. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Because otherwise it just seemed very unfair to just highlight like Minnesota is cold. Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, it was welcome to our cold place. We're gonna celebrate winter here with this
Mm.
weird, weird, unsuccessful dance routine. But what happened that year? So, do you remember the TV show In Living Color?
No, I was 3.5 years old at the 1992 Super Bowl.
So, In Living Color is a sketch comedy show which had, I think, a 3 or 4 year run in the early 90s, and which, is known for, I think it was planned, like run by the Wayans brothers, but people like Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey got a start there, David Allen Greer. So these big names, mostly black comedians with a sort of hip hop themed, very urban, very black sketch comedy show, which got wildly popular for a few years in the early 90s and raunchy. And they decided to do their own halftime show. So much like Turning Point USA is now trying to compete against the halftime show. Oh, and they were on Fox, which at that time was a broadcast network which was trying to break into the big three and not succeeding, right?
Mhm.
So they persuaded the network to let them do a halftime show of their own, a comedy special where they made jokes about football and watching football. And they drew, I think, more than 10% of the NFL's audience. And especially since it was like already a bad game, like the game was not even, people just left. So people stopped watching the Super Bowl at halftime, went and watched In Living Color, and never came back.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
So it was devastating for the NFL, and they said, well, we can't let this happen again. And so the next year, instead of booking Up With People or some student marching band, got Michael Jackson to do the show.
Pulling out the big guns.
And I think the theme name for that show we should highlight, like It's very clear what they're doing. It's called an unprecedented Super Bowl spectacular starring Michael Jackson. So they're getting like basically the biggest artist in the world at that time to come in and do something that
Right.
people are not going to change the channel on.
And they're really trying to signal like we're different now. This is no longer your folksy
Right.
mid-game entertainment. This is the reason to watch.
And I think it's super interesting because like I was talking to my brother about this. He had no idea that there was a transition from not doing like these spectacular things like we know now. There clearly was like it was this decision to feature Michael Jackson as the halftime show and then followed up with other singular like either single artist or group of artists, but led focused musical performances by well-known musicians who are the center of the attraction, not a peripheral thing that sometimes happens.
So in the 90s, was there like after 1993, was there ever a retreat back to the earlier model, or was it kind of like 1993, Michael Jackson comes, and then this is here to stay? Like it's always a spectacle, and specifically, it's always like a musical spectacle.
Yeah, there's a little bit of weirdness that happens. Like, so 1995, there is the Indiana Jones and Temple of the Forbidden Eye as the theme of the halftime show, featuring Patti LaBelle and Indiana Jones, as well as like Teddy Pendergrass and Tony Bennett. So
Yeah, that seems like a retreat.
seems
Yeah.
like a retreat, but and they continue to do themes for a while. They do 30 years of the Super Bowl, but it's only featuring Diana Ross. Or they do the Blues Brothers, which is a spectacular of a
Mm.
kind, but still themed. But then you get like Boys to Men,
Hmm.
Gloria Estefan and Stevie Wonder, Phil Collins. So you are shifting back into like big
Mm.
stars more and more being the feature of the Super Bowl halftime show.
And obviously, like contrary to what Turning Points USA would claim, they have not always been American, and they have not always been white.
Right. No, absolutely not. But they did. So interesting thing is that the year after Michael Jackson, so Michael Jackson was 1993, 1994 was their country spectacular featuring Black, Tanya Tucker, Travis Tritt, and the Judds. So they did do this shift into a more like Americana centered year before going back into more pop culture, boys to men sort of things. I think since you didn't have a chance to watch this earlier, the one the one Super Bowl halftime show I think you should see, especially once you've seen some of those Up with People performances, is Michael Jackson because the contrast is so
Mm.
stark.
Michael Jackson at the height of his powers.
Right. Michael Jackson at his absolute peak.
Because I think that's maybe one contrast between like what they seem to have been doing in the 90s and some of what we saw in the 2000s and 2010s is it sounds like in the 90s, I mean, I don't know those country artists, so I don't know what that was all about, but Michael Jackson, Boyz II Men, Gloria Estefan, they were really getting like big artists at the peak of their fame, at the peak of their abilities as a performing artist. Whereas then in the 2000s and 2010s, I don't know about the 2020s. I'm trying to remember, like, I don't remember what happened during the COVID era, but there came to be a period of time where there were a lot of nostalgia acts headlining the halftime show. But it sounds like in the 90s, that was not the goal. The goal was to be contemporary.
Yeah. It's worth saying why that is. So, well, you know about Nipplegate.
Yes.
Maybe some of our listeners don't. Maybe some of them are young enough not to know.
Ah, okay. So Justin Timberlake in his solo career after NSYNC and Janet Jackson performed together at the halftime show. I don't remember what year this was.
I think it is 2004.
Oh, okay. There were all these other people there that I had totally like, because Nipplegate became the whole controversy. I did not remember that all these other people were apparently there too.
Right.
But now we can see, according to Wikipedia anyway, in addition to Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, there was also P. Diddy, Nelly, Kid Rock, and Jessica Simpson. So just like a total grab bag of different people who you would, not necessarily today put together as a halftime act. which is interesting.
Yeah, can I jump in? One thing to add there, like I think the way this works much of the time is that the NFL will hire a headliner, so the NFL will reach out to Janet Jackson, say, "Do you want to do the show?" Well, they don't hire them. The performers don't get paid for this, which I think is interesting, but the NFL will select a headliner.
Paid in exposure.
That's what they say.
Wow.
And so then the headliner will recruit their friends, right? Will recruit allied performers to join them on stage. So most likely Janet Jackson was hired and then reached out to these performers, said, "Would you like to share the stage with me?"
Okay.
It's worth noting here, interesting thing about Janet Jackson, she was originally scheduled to be the 2002 performance, but was viewed as not somber enough for after 9/11 and so got booted. And so then as like the NFL making it up to her, invited her back in 2004. So Nipplegate.
So, okay. I don't remember when in the show this happened because when it happened, it sort of became the end of the show.
Right.
But I don't know if it was originally designed that way. But at a certain point in the program, Justin Timberlake ripped open Janet Jackson's shirt. Is that what happened? Like, or like pulled it aside? I can't like there's like this ripping motion that's what I have in my head.
I think it got torn open and it looks like, I mean it's hard to say, but it looks like it was a tearaway,
Right.
but it's very not clear if it's a tearaway or it got torn.
Yeah.
In either case, he tore her top off for like a microsecond where I don't think TV viewers could really see anything. There was, yeah, this controversy that her bare breasts had been exposed on national television, and parents couldn't believe what their children were subjected to that day.
It was like, I mean, this controversy went on and on and on. Like it took up so much media oxygen. I can't even begin to describe it. And Janet Jackson became persona non grata afterward.
Yeah. Justin Timberlake not
No.
impacted, but Janet Jackson, her career really suffered as a result. So afterwards, this is when those nostalgia acts start. And it's because the NFL like decided they didn't want to take any risks with provocative artists.
Mm.
So the next year they have Paul McCartney. The year after that they have the Rolling Stones.
So wait, also like nostalgia act just means male act.
Yeah, white boomer.
Yeah, but also, clearly like there's also a thought process of like, well, if there are no like female breasts on the stage, then there can't be a nipplegate and they're safe.
Yeah, which is funny, like given like the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger's performance, like reputation as like a highly sexualized performer, right? But like not
Yes,
one who's going to violate network standards by exposing himself, perhaps. Although he was shirtless, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like,
perhaps.
I mean, is Mick Jagger capable of performing in a shirt?
No, don't think so.
So you have Prince in there, who is, I think his performance is widely regarded as one of the historic best. But then you go back, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, The Who. Like there's just this long list of 1960s nostalgia acts that follow Nipplegate because the NFL just doesn't want any
Mm,
trouble.
interesting. I had not put that together that was why we got these years and years of nostalgia acts.
In some ways, the NFL is always reactive, right? So the choices that they're making about who gets to perform is always a reaction to something that's happened, the time before. So they get upstaged by In Living Color. Now they have something that's hip and young to compete. So In Living Color can't steal away the youth, right? They get a scandal. They do something that's the opposite of the scandal.
Hmm.
Going forward, the next big scandal is going to be Black Lives Matter, right? And how do they
Hmm.
and the NFL gets in a lot of trouble in Black Lives Matter for a variety of reasons. One of which being its blackballing of Colin Kaepernick. So Colin Kaepernick, NFL quarterback who takes a knee during the national anthem to protest police injustice, and successful NFL quarterback, Super Bowl level NFL quarterback. Afterwards, no team will hire him. And so in 2017, I think he gets cut, doesn't get a new
I
contract.
think not, if I remember correctly, not just no team will hire him, can't even get a workout to get looked at by a team.
He gets a couple, but they're clearly publicity acts, like the NFL trying to look like it's giving him a
Mm.
workout and not being seriously considered. And the closest he gets, I think the Ravens consider bringing him in as a backup quarterback at some point, like giving him a second chance. And the owner says, "Should I do this? I'm morally torn." And all of the white racists in Baltimore write in say no. And he says, "Oh, the fans have
Oh,
spoken. I
oh
can't bring him
no.
in." So he let the fans say no, we don't want this. And then like, well, he invited a segment of the fan base to react violently and then pretended like, he was making
Right.
a neutral choice. Kaepernick eventually sued the NFL for colluding against him, which seemed like a pretty cut and dry case. It was settled out of court, but the NFL paid a lot of money to prevent the case from going forward. Like he won several $1 million in the settlement. But the thing that's happening at the same time is you have the rise of Black Lives Matter. So you have a series of high profile police and vigilante killings of black people, primarily black men, but also some black women, and the rise of Black Lives Matter movement. And as we know, a large portion of the NFL player base is black and wants to protest. And a lot of these artists are black, right? So there's this push on the NFL to respond to the Black Lives Matter movement in some way, but they're a bunch of old racists. So, you have this tension riling the NFL.
And they, I think the Ravens example points to like they have tensions in, the NFL fans, that
Right.
there are different segments of fans who want the NFL to respond in different ways. And they're also getting quite a lot of pressure from Trump during his
Yeah.
first term in office.
Well, Trump is calling for firing any NFL player who takes a knee, calling on people to boycott the NFL because they don't want to see this kind of activism. They don't want to see the black players standing up for rights. And so when the NFL goes to Atlanta in 2019, black artists boycott. So a number of black artists refused to play, including Rihanna, who notably was offered the gig and said, "No, I won't do it because of what happened to Kaepernick." I think Cardi B also refused. So there's a series of high profile acts refusing. Jay-Z starts publicly advocating for people to boycott the performance. It seems like now quite cynically because Jay-Z eventually secured a contract with the NFL to manage the halftime shows. So he led this boycott and then pivoted into making money for himself.
I mean, that's just Jay-Z being a savvy businessman. He's showing the NFL, look how much market power I can command. You
Right.
either play ball with me or you don't.
Right.
But also, yeah, that sucks and is shitty, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just very Jay-Z in a way that makes me laugh.
Yes, it is exactly who he is. He doesn't hide it at all. And so Maroon 5 plays the 2019 halftime show, and it's in Atlanta, and there's a lot of outrage about Atlanta hip hop not being represented. So eventually they do succeed in recruiting Big Boy and Travis Scott, well-known Atlanta rappers who want to represent Atlanta to participate. But there's this whole controversy, and the NFL gets a lot of bad press for the fact that black artists don't want to play because
Hmm.
of the NFL's failure to address race.
And this is a moment in time like 2018, 2019, thereabouts, right? Where there's a lot of energy in boycotts as a form of cultural activism, right? So this is
Yeah.
also like the period of Oscars So White, and if I'm not mistaken, a few other kind of like boycotts of like sporting matches, awards shows, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. This is going to be out of order, but I should have mentioned Beyonce's 2016 performance, which was Coldplay's show.
Yeah, let's talk about that. And
So Coldplay is the host, and they invite Bruno Mars and Beyonce to perform. And this is where I think a couple days before Beyonce drops Lemonade, the surprise album with the song Formation on it, and then performs Formation at the Super Bowl. So brand new song. with the backup dancers are all dressed to resemble Black Panthers. So they're all wearing black berets and kind of leather jackets, although they're wearing short shorts. So they're very leggy Black Panthers,
Like booty shorts, yes.
booty shorts. And so it's an interesting tribute to the Black Panthers. I think there's a lot that can be said about this. The formation as a song is about being one, unapologetically black, but two, unapologetically successful in capitalist terms. So it is like a celebration of black capitalism. I think it has the lyrics like about being a black Bill Gates in the making. So there's this weird embrace of the Panthers as an image of black empowerment, black success. Also their visual spectacle, and certainly like the Black Panthers at like part of their success was being a visual brand that conveyed, black strength, right? And pride, but also taking it as a celebration of black capitalism, which is clearly what the Panthers were not. So you have a little bit of some people might question the way this legacy is used, but at the same time, it sparks huge outrage from the right because, the Black Panthers are the enemy.
Looking back on it now, it feels very of the moment in terms of like boss babe, kind of like millennial woman power aesthetics in a way that was evident at the time as well, but that was celebrated then. And I think now we look back on it and we're like, oh no.
Yeah. A funny thing. So as you know, I watched like a billion of these over the last few days. So she has this line in Formation about having hot sauce in her purse or hot sauce in her bag.
That's right. Yes. Which then Hillary Clinton did something with in the 2016 election.
Hillary Clinton on a black interview show, they said, what's something you always have with you? And said, oh, I always have hot sauce in my purse. What's widely perceived to have been blatant pandering to the black audience in condescending ways. And it's interesting, it's like 2 months after this. So like it may even be like just taken from the song. You know what I mean? It's
I think it genuinely is taken from the song. Like I can't imagine that Hillary Clinton or her staffers would have known enough to make this reference if it had not been for the song.
Right.
Or maybe her staffers would have said, you should say this, but the idea that Hillary Clinton agreed to say this is 100% because of the song lyric.
Yeah. So the other piece of that performance is the outrage from the right. So you have Rudy Giuliani, friend of the show. Sorry. Rudy Giuliani went out and called the show an attack on cops.
Of course he did.
For its celebration of the Black Panthers. Yeah. And then the president of the Houston Police Officers Union said the underlying theme of police brutality did strike a nerve with some of the officers, but he didn't quite understand the video. Clearly, we have a lot of officers who are complaining. Until somebody explains to me what it means, I don't want to jump on the bandwagon and say we need to boycott Beyonce.
Oh, that's a very pure quote.
But anyway, yeah, there were these calls from the Rudy Giulianis of the world who probably don't listen to Beyonce anyway, but for boycotting and outrage at the NFL for having this kind of spectacle. So that's also in the push and pull as the rise of Black Lives Matter is happening, is like the NFL doesn't want to be too black and alienate its white fan base, but they don't want to be too racist and stop the black artists from coming. So they have this needle to thread.
And by this point, they're incredibly self-aware about being like this football, haha, in the culture wars, right?
Yeah.
They understand that whatever they do is going to be politicized and,
right,
read through these like tribal kinds of lenses in various directions.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally in the culture wars.
And in part because of the way that, I don't know where, like, to what degree what was very clear during the Black Lives Matter era is that the NFL chose to respond really differently than other sports leagues did, right? The NBA, for instance, had a totally different response to this moment. And so, yeah, the NFL found itself caught in the middle of this culture war, but entirely because of choices of its own making that it could have chosen differently.
Yeah, you're right. And it's interesting to say, like, in basketball, the players have a lot more power.
Yes.
Just like they have a lot more control over the sport and a lot more ability to say, this is what we're going to do. And so the owners are a lot more forced, whereas I think that that power dynamic is reversed in football,
Mhm.
where the players really don't have a lot of say. It's We're saying a couple things here. One is that the owners of football teams, like the 32 teams, they're billionaires, obviously, which means their politics are likely bad, but many of them are especially noxious. So, you know, Jerry Jones, owner of the Cowboys, there's a photo that circulated in after Kaepernick was kicked out of the league of him rioting, part of a white riot to prevent the integration of schools in Little Rock.
Jeez.
So, like as a young man, he was a perpetrator of racial violence against black people. He's defended himself saying he was just a curious young man, which,
That's not a very good defense.
yeah, no, no longer in the league, but Jerry Richardson, so the founder of the Carolina Panthers, he made his money off of restaurant chains, including Denny's, which in the 1980s and 90s faced a series of lawsuits for discriminating against black customers, refusing to serve black customers like systematically across the restaurant chain.
Wow.
So so again, like someone who made their money by being a grotesque racist.
Hmm.
Then in the 2000s, he gets in trouble for publicly making racist remarks and for sexually harassing his female
Of
employees.
course he did.
And so that's enough of embarrassment that he gets forced to sell. But everyone knew who he was already, right? It's just that he said it
Hmm.
outside of like the owner's room, but everyone knows what he's saying in the
Right.
owner's room. And you have, all of these Trump buddies. You have
Robert Kraft.
you have Robert Kraft. You have the Washington team, which
Yeah.
until recently was a slur, right?
Hmm.
Which the owner vigorously defended it being a slur. And now that that's changed, there's enormous pressure from Trump and others to change it back, right? And then you have like the Kansas City Chiefs, which is
Hmm.
not as big of a slur, but is still like you watch their games and their fans make a racist chant and dance
Yeah.
as like celebrating the team, right? So it's a huge sport that has immediate racial problems. And so when this is going on, you also have that like dynamic from the ownership. And there's like a fascinating article from the New York Times. So after 2020, the NFL's racism becomes untenable for a moment, right? That it's too visible, the players are too mad, they're being boycotted by artists. Fans are now aware of the racism of the league. And so they begin trying to soften their message. So there is actually a photo of Jerry Jones and his players taking a knee.
Oh, yeah. Which is somehow even worse than like the Democratic congressional leadership photo.
Right.
Yeah.
Just totally cynical, but there's all of this performative wokeness from the NFL, for lack of a better word, including like they begin painting messages in the end zones, which at first include Black Lives Matter, as well as like end racism. So these messages get painted in the end zones, and players put names of murdered black people on their helmets. So there's this sort of like NFL is forced to make some concessions
Hmm.
to at least nominally allowing Black Lives Matter awareness on the field.
Hmm.
But there's this fascinating New York Times article. As the NFL fights racism and sexism, team owners undercut the message because they're just such big racists. They can't even play along in 2021.
Right, right. They realize that they need a PR campaign to convince fans that they're not racist. They've probably paid a PR agency a lot of money to come up with an effective PR campaign, but then they're such babies that they can't even follow through on it.
Right.
That's great. That's great. So what are the owners doing at this time?
Well, let's see. Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets and the United States' ambassador to Britain, so Trump's ambassador to Britain, was accused of making comments to embassy colleagues that were racist or sexist, complaints that State Department investigators included in a report filed in February. Johnson regularly made his female and black staff members uncomfortable or worse. So he's the focus of this article. That one black female diplomat, for example, told colleagues that Johnson disparaged her efforts to schedule events for Black History Month. The diplomat said Johnson once asked if he had to speak to an audience that was, quote, just a bunch of black people, and told her that she was marginalizing herself.
Oh, God. Great stuff.
Yeah. So meanwhile, like the NFL is trying to do all of these visible branding things to brand itself as more racially inclusive. And one thing which I think is really funny is that they have the messages in the end zone. So they are in 2021, stop hate, Black Lives Matter, end racism. It takes all of us, inspire change, and say their stories. And say their stories is the name of the NFL's campaign to name people who've been murdered by police. In 2025, they still have these end zone inspirational quotes, you know, but it's end racism, choose love, or inspire change, right? So all of the meat is gone, right?
Yeah.
They're just these empty platitudes pretending to be still somehow inclusive or better than they are. And it's funny, just this past Martin Luther King Day, they announced that in honor of Martin Luther King, they're painting choose love in the end zones on Martin Luther King Day.
Poor Martin Luther King, like,
Oh, he's so fucking abused by the NFL.
yeah, dude cannot catch a break.
Well, I mean, maybe we should just mention this historic conservative campaign to dilute what Martin Luther King stood for to something meaningless and
Anodyne.
and even conservative facing. Like
Right.
campaigns against affirmative action say, well, Martin Luther King didn't like thinking about race, so we shouldn't work to ameliorate racism, right? Like that's
Right.
not
Martin Luther King advocated for a colorblind society, and we're just following through on
Right.
his wishes. Yeah.
right. So the long history of conservatives seeking to appropriate and invert his campaign, his legacy, certainly the NFL is a part of that. But
Yeah.
it's so rapid how their efforts to appease their players and their fans have shifted into like something completely meaningless, which I'm sure you could see at the time, but it's even more so blatantly now.
Yeah.
On that note, like here's something else to say, which is that one of the things we're getting bombarded with now are people saying, well, you shouldn't say abolish ICE, right? Because you shouldn't say abolish ICE because people said abolish the police or defund the police, and that was a loser. A few things. It wasn't a loser at the time, right? Like it won. It didn't get anything done because Democrats are cowards, but it would mobilize people. It forced the NFL to put fucking Black Lives Matter in the end zone and to put the names of murdered black people on the back of players' helmets. And the fact that they've backed down doesn't mean it wasn't influential at the time. And I did some research on the PR campaign from the police in Minneapolis after 2020. One of the things that came up is that defunding the Minneapolis police in Minneapolis had something like 70% popular support after George Floyd was murdered. And that nationally, it continues in 2025. Defunding the police continues to have plurality support. So something like 35%, but people who oppose it are lower, and then everyone else is neutral. So this idea that it's a loser is wrong.
Yeah. No, I guess I'm just thinking about how in 2020 and today, the dynamic that you see is that, I know Marxists will be angry with me for saying this, but I think that political change is downstream of cultural and social change. I'm an anarchist. This is just part of my political philosophy that people make the change and then that change is reflected in their institutions or the institutions wither away when they can't keep up. And I think part of what you see in 2020 and today is that progressives, the left, the center left, to some extent, are making change on the ground.
Right.
And you see corporate responses that, corporations like the NFL have to keep their eye on the pulse of the grassroots because that's who they're selling and marketing their products to, right? And so we can
Right.
see the effectiveness of grassroots advocacy and grassroots change making in corporate responses like what the NFL did in the 2010s and into the 2020s. What you don't see is any, or I shouldn't say any, but you see very little representation of those views from the elite strata of our society. So all that you see
Right.
is people in leadership positions in business and politics being pushed to act, being pushed to respond. I really like the sort of symmetry of Jerry Jones taking a knee and the congressional Democratic leadership taking a knee, in that you can see that both of those they come across as obviously inauthentic positions. And that's because because
Right.
they've been pushed to it by mass action. So I think, there's been so much talk about the vibe shift and then the vibe shift that wasn't, but the vibe shift that then became the vibe shift that wasn't was largely a top-down phenomenon, to some extent an astroturfed phenomenon. And I think that that the NFL is dealing with, because it has no other choice than to deal with it, this is real.
Right. I think like two things there. One, just to, for listeners who aren't as terminally online as us, the vibe shift being this sense from the Democratic Party that Trump was popular now, and so they couldn't resist, right? And even though people on the ground continued to resist, it was time to agree with Trump's message was a position taken by a large part of the Democratic Party's leadership, and then clearly proven wrong.
Right. And if you're trying to figure out like, well, what does that mean to, take the Trump position seriously as a Democrat? Think about someone like Gavin Newsom, right? Who clearly understands that this is a morally fucked project and yet is looking to accommodate it and appear to be with the program.
Yeah. So taking very bigoted anti-trans positions, for example, or going on Ben Shapiro's show, which Newsom does regularly.
Mhm.
You also have, I think it's Chris Murphy, who like brags about how Biden successfully deported more people than Trump, as Trump is not as successful at being racist as the Democrats, like as the position he wants to take. So you have like a number of high profile Democrats who think Trump is the way forward, but they're getting their asses handed to them. And so what you are seeing in the Senate now and moving to the House is some momentum to at least pretend to push back on ICE. And that'll increase, I think. But you're right. You have to force them to say it. You have to force them to take the positions. You have to make it untenable for them not to perform the thing, even if they're insincere. And as long as you can hold their feet to that fire, which everyone will push back against, but that's where you can make that sort of lasting shift of what politics are possible or not.
Yeah. And I think it's been really inspiring to see some of that heat come back in the last year.
Yeah, no, it is. It's sad, like a thing that, I've talked about with friends and colleagues, right? Like George Floyd didn't choose to be a martyr, right? He was just living his life. So Renee Good and Alex Pretty, they protested, but they were not choosing to be martyrs. They were choosing to defend their neighbors. Minneapolis didn't ask for this. It's not heroic in the sense that like we shouldn't take it as a sacrifice for the nation's good. But it is inspiring that people are there and fighting and standing up, right? These two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. And I think like direct action gets the goods.
Right.
I believe that, right? This is not quite the civil rights movement, but the tactics of civil disobedience are similar. And you can see the ways in which the bravery of these activists in creating a world where people can trust their neighbors and take care of each other is bit by bit building that world
Right.
that they were imagining when they went out onto the street.
Yeah. So this has been good.
We sort of It's been good. We sort of took a turn from the very end of our outline.
Yeah, we have not actually really talked that much about the Super Bowl halftime show. We did talk a lot about Minneapolis and other things, which is totally fine.
After after saying we're not doing an episode about Minneapolis.
This is our halftime show spectacular, and we invited our friends from the Resistance to join us and guide us in this, perhaps.
I think that's
I
fine.
think it's fine too. I think like this has been a good conversation. Like we've been able to use the halftime show as a spark to talk about some real issues.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things left which we should check in on. One is we still haven't watched Michael Jackson,
Ah, that's true.
and it's worth seeing.
Let's do
All
that.
right, so let's do that first.
Okay.
Like compare this to the amateurism you saw the previous year.
It's so good. It's mesmerizing. And especially thinking about this as like the first like spectacle type
Yeah.
halftime show. It's incredible, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what what would it have felt like after years of halftime shows that were like card tricks and up with people and Winter Olympics dance extravaganza to suddenly like you're watching the halftime show and Michael Jackson
And
is moonwalking, right? Like,
it's amazing.
yeah.
And it's so conscious of the performance. So
Yes.
we should describe, the first thing is there is a big television screen. It shows Michael Jackson, and then and the screen is airlifted. There's a puff of smoke. He appears standing on top of the screen. It's probably a body double, but that's the appearance, right?
The appearance is that he like emerges from the screen to on top of it.
He's been levitated up. Then it happens on another screen across the stadium. And then he comes up from under the stage and pops like, good 5 feet into the air. Like he goes way, like there's like a spring underneath him and he really like flies up into the air and lands ready to go. And then he just stands there, silent, not moving.
And people are freaking out.
Right. He stands there for at least 2 minutes. He's just like
Yeah.
totally still, not saying anything. And then he takes off his glasses and the music starts and people are freaking out. And not only is he an incredible dancer and singer, but his backup choreography is also on point. And it's so different from the chaos of all the stuff that's come before.
And yeah, and it's so intentional, right? Like
Yeah.
there's this like real attention to detail and stagecraft. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's totally wild. It's like I've watched a bunch of these. So Dr. Dre and Friends is probably my favorite, but this is second. This is the second best one that I've seen. Like it's just unbelievable how good it is and how well it holds up, 30 years later.
Yeah. I mean, no joke, like I'm going to, after we finish recording this podcast, I'm going to go back and watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I do want to know, why is Dr. Dre and Friends your favorite ever halftime show?
So probably one, because I like the music. I like Michael
Fair.
too, but like, he does like Heal the World and stuff, which are a little bit on the cheese side.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great performance. Like the set is incredible. It's such a cool celebration of Black Los Angeles. It's just it really it's also very intentional. It's very well put together. The move between the different performers and across the set is really cool. Really, high tech without being while still being minimal in a way. You know what I mean? Like it works so well. So I feel like that's a really great performance and one that really celebrated West Coast hip hop in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the best halftime shows are clearly where they just like give an artist complete control of
Yeah.
who they want to invite to join them, how they want to stage it. Because I hear what you're saying, that's kind of the normal pattern, is the headliner is, allowed to invite people to join them. But there are definitely years where you can feel the NFL kind of meddling in how that goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some years where there's this like purity of artistic vision that just like makes for a really like spine-tingling kind of experience.
Yeah. So the other thing we didn't get to yet, which I think we want to say, is that coming out of that boycott in 2019 and then the George Floyd uprising in 2020 and the NFL scramble to manage its appearance and its partnership with Jay-Z to run the halftime show, then you get a series of shows that are very proudly black, right? So the next series of shows, you have Dr. Dre and Friends in 2022, Rihanna in 2023, Usher in 2024, Kendrick in 2025, right? So you have this string of like bold black culture.
Hmm.
And a couple interesting things that come out of that, right? Like Kendrick's performance is often described as an insult to Trump, and he has Samuel L. Jackson playing Uncle Sam in a sarcastic way, imagery of the American flag, but reappropriated towards images of black resistance as part of the performance. The other like weird little protests, like the weird little protests happen these things. So one of Kendrick's backup dancers whipped out a Palestine flag and a Sudan flag and ran around before security escorted him out, right?
That's great.
So there are these weird little protests that sneak into this. In Dr. Dre and Friends, Eminem took a knee in honor of Colin Kaepernick after having been told not to by the NFL, right? So there's
That's great.
I don't have a lot of love for Eminem, but respect to that, right? Like taking a position and trying to
Hmm.
force
Hmm.
like these things on a stage. But
Yeah. And like respect to his seeming political awakening over
right.
the last couple of years. Yeah.
And performers have a lot of power. Like once they're on that stage, a lot of it is managed. I think a lot of times it's pre-recorded, but they can still use that stage to their own ends. And
Yeah. That's the power of live performance. Yeah.
the fact that the NFL needs black culture to remain culturally relevant means that these opportunities will continue to present themselves. That's reminding me of a quote that I really like, so I'm going to find it really quickly. Yeah, so this is Alicia Montgomery talking about the gentrification of Detroit, but talking about the role of selling black culture to sell Detroit. And she says, the legacies of civil rights and black power struggles combined with consumer demand, parentheses, black culture sells, force white business interests to involve black entrepreneurs, professionals, and artists. And, like this subordinates the black poor even as it incorporates their culture. But it also, like, she goes further to say, like, it does give these artists and entrepreneurs opportunities to push back against the displacement and violence against black people that's happening every day, right? And I think you see that in the Super Bowl also. These artists are able to demand concessions for performing, right? And to take things even
Right.
when it's not demanded.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that Montgomery uses the word force in that passage that you read, because I think force is the right word for the power dynamic, right?
Yeah,
The NFL is not actually in the driver's seat
right.
when they're making these choices about who should be performing during halftime. They're trying to exert control, but really they're being forced by the culture in which the NFL operates to make these moves.
And on that note, maybe we should bring it back to Bad Bunny because one of the things that's been funny and interesting to watch is his willingness to trade barbs with conservatives.
Hmm.
So as people have said, you shouldn't be the NFL halftime show. He says, he goes on Saturday Night Live and gives a monologue in Spanish and says at the end, you've got, 4 months to learn what that says. Right? I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
More recently, Erica Kirk said something about not wanting, she said, here's the quote, nothing says America like country, family, and faith, not reggaeton in Spanish. So racist and dismissive, obviously.
Yeah.
But Bad Bunny comes back and says, if America was only what you say, the Super Bowl would just be two guys yodeling on a tractor. Half of your playlist is already Spanish. You just don't admit it because you can't roll your R's.
Oh, that's so good.
If representing America means excluding half the country, then Bendito, someone give her a map and a playlist. Like it's
Yeah.
amazing. Like he's just willing to come back and fight in these ways. And I'm sure the NFL doesn't want this controversy, but they also need him.
Yeah.
And we should say they need him more because they're trying to expand their market into Latin America, right? So they can't just
Right.
jettison this. They have to have it, but that brings the fight to them, regardless of what they
Yeah.
want.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's worth saying that Bad Bunny is so smart, not just as a musician, but also as like a self-marketer, right?
Right.
These barbs are very much like part of his persona. But then also there's, I don't want to call it cultural hybridity, this magic that comes from the fact that he is Puerto Rican, right? That means that he is in fact American and also Latin American. Both of those are who he is. But I don't know. I saw a video the other day of Bad Bunny performing a song by Victor Jara in Chile. And, like Chile is so much farther from Puerto Rico than like, half the cities that the Super Bowl is played in are, right?
In any case, it's as far as any NFL stadium, right?
Exactly, exactly. And to see him just like lean into this music that is very much not reggaeton
Right.
because it would be meaningful to this audience to hear one of the biggest artists in the world play something by Victor Jara. It's just incredibly touching, right? To see that like the amount of respect with which he comes to an audience. And so I don't know, like yes, again, like the NFL wanting to expand into Latin America and create a market for American football there is, of course, incredibly cynical, incredibly corporate strategy doc.
Right.
But at the same time, choosing Bad Bunny as your emissary for that move, not a bad choice.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Victor Yara is also politically meaningful, right?
Yes. So Victor Jara was killed by Pinochet at the beginning of the dictatorship. So he was one of the people held in the soccer stadium at the beginning of the coup. And if I'm not mistaken, the song that Bad Bunny performed is a song that he wrote while he was being held prisoner in the stadium right before he was
Yeah.
killed. Yeah.
That is, I mean, that's really moving and meaningful. I mean, obviously, I don't want to put expectations on these artists, right? Like their job is to be successful artists, but it's really cool that he's taking this opportunity and doing this with it.
Yeah. And again, like there's like an open-heartedness there because no matter what white American racists might think, like Chile is not Puerto Rico. These are very different places with entire, I don't want to say entirely, but with very different musical traditions.
Yeah.
And yeah, so to see like this like open-heartedness and flexibility that to be an entertainer means to like meet people where they are and with the music that is meaningful to them is like this really beautiful approach to take.
Yeah. I love that.
And also like, I don't know, I was just thinking, I recently rewatched the clip of him playing in Chile because I was listening to an old Pete Seeger, Arlo Guthrie live album.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, where I mean, this must have been like I think it was probably recorded in the 70s. And so Pete Seeger at one point he like speaks about Victor Jara and he says, my Spanish isn't very good, so I can't sing this song for you the way that he wrote it, but it's the same song
Oh,
that Bad Bunny later would go on to play. So what he does is he reads the lyrics in English translation and then he whistles his way through the song.
oh, that's so sweet.
And he's like whistling and playing the guitar and it's incredibly sweet and a reminder that like white people can have that kind of open-heartedness too, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't actually have to know how to roll your R's to still be a good human.
Yeah. I am going to practice my tractor yodeling, but not as bad as this.
Just because it's a useful skill to have in this day and
Because
age.
it sounds like fun, to be honest.
That is a very white thing for you to say. I hope you enjoy your tractor yodeling.
Yeah, I will. I will. Do we have anything else that we want to say?
I mean, just that I'll be like I don't watch any football, but I
Yeah.
will be watching next week.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch and to reflect on it when it happens.
I do feel like I have to be an anti-fan because I live in Boston and I do not want the Patriots to win. So
God, no.
tough position to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the appropriate, from a football perspective, that's the appropriate response. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, I'll be watching too. We should text each other our live responses if we feel up to it.
Yes.
Great.
Do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I feel like that's good. I felt like this was really fun and good.
I agree. Thank you for putting together this fun list of links.
Yeah.
I'm going to definitely be watching some of them later on.
Yeah. Well, cool. So we should wrap it up. So thank you everyone for listening and for joining us. And we hope you enjoy Bad Bunny's halftime show as we hope we will. And we'll talk to you next time. So I'm Colin McLaughlin-Alcock,
I'm Marielle Grushko.
and you've been listening to Bad Art.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.